we're going to go over key performance indicators, KPIs. Now, it's interesting about KPIs. Instead of walking you through a bunch of PowerPoint slides about key performance indicators, what I want to do is talk to you directly as a consultant to client, if that's okay, for about 7.5 minutes. So if you could grab a notepad and something to write with, I want to review with you some critical key performance indicators and a little bit of a background of how they came about. I'd say probably around 88 probably, or 89. When I was a young technician getting into management, I was sent away for an entire week for a boot camp, a business boot camp that revolutionized the way I thought. It was amazing. So I walked away with certain indicators, but it was simple. It was easy. And most of those principles came from a book called The Great Game of Business. The Great Game of Business, buy that book online. It's invaluable. Basically, International Harvester and Harley Davidson almost went bankrupt during the 80s. Some of you might remember that, like I did. But they recovered. The way they recovered is because they made sure that everything on the front line, everything they expected them to do, supported the financial requirements of the organization. And they took that model and made a very simplistic model for the HVAC industry that people still use today, but it's a little bit outdated. And here it is, okay? It was very simple. Number one, make sure to keep your overhead below 30% of sales. Number one. Number two, make sure that your gross margins for the total company is 42% or greater. If you do that, you should be putting about 12% to the bottom line. Now, that's from the business side back then. Now we take that forward to the field, right? So our installation labor to sales, we want labor to be 8% or less than total sales. And for service, the KPI was 22% of service labor to sales. So if a technician went out and charged $200 for a call, 22% of that $200 would go towards pay. Make sense? Okay. So, but back then, there was basically two types of heating and air conditioning systems. There was a mid, which was an 80%, and then a condensing. That was it. The price spread between those two wasn't very big. It wasn't very big. And the big selling proposition at that point was it's going to save you a lot of money because, you know, right now you have a system, 40 cents of every cubic foot of gas goes up the flue pipe, 60% heat your home. With this system, 10 cents is going to go up the flue pipe and 90% is going to heat your home. That was easy. Doesn't really apply today, does it? Because all of a sudden the equipment cost went up quite a bit. Along the way, it became confusing because I'm not exactly sure why, but there's a lot of complexities put into these KPIs. So for today, I want to break it down in the new way and keep it simple. Are you ready for this? We need to start just like they did back in the late 80s when I was introduced, with the business side of it first. Back then, it was about gross margins, right? It's 42% or better, and your overhead, keeping it at less than 30%. Today, to modernize this, it's all about cash flow and break even, okay? First KPI, at the beginning of the month, are you cash positive? Okay? Most companies aren't. They start at a deficit and make it up. So your first KPI to work towards is to have saved anywhere from 3 months to 6 months worth of your total operating costs in the bank, so your positive cash flows, your cash strong. That's number one. Number two, break even for your entire company. You want to make sure that you hit your break-even mark by the second or third week of every month consistently. That'll put you in a position to where you're profitable. If you just gauge those two things, and I'm happy to help you do this, just call me, text me. Maybe we'll get a Zoom with a few people on to do that. Those two things are going to drive the rest of the KPIs, okay? So once we establish those two things, that will drive strategy. That will drive structure and what needs to happen to get the business side of the business healthy. And then, of course, departmentally, different business segments. The KPIs for service, it's very simple. One is revenue per hour. For every hour that technician gets paid, how much revenue should they bring in? On average, it should be somewhere between $95 and $125 for every hour they're on the clock. Write that down. Find out where you are. Second, we're looking for lead turnovers, okay? And older equipment. So roughly 10% of the calls, if properly trained, would generate an opportunity to upgrade the system. And then maintenance agreements. During demand season, we're looking for 30 to 35% conversions to agreements. Old school said that you build your business off of agreements and the performance of those technicians in the home. It's the best way to do it. Write this down: 250 two-visit agreements. 250 will keep one technician in front of at least 4 to 5 customers all year, as long as you do not perform those maintenance agreement tune-ups during demand season. That's when you're open for business. That's the strategy part of it, right? But I can tell you today that works famously, because once you get past that capacity and ready to add trucks, you will never be slow again, okay? Now, sales, close, 50% or better. If you're not at 50%, we need to get better at selling, okay? You need to be in front of 2 to 3 customers a day, every day. Figure out how to do it, right? Number 3, average selling price, okay? And then for the installation, installed revenue per crew per day. Those are just a few of the KPIs that are super important. The point of this conversation is the starting point. I think a lot of people hurt themselves. I've witnessed it myself, is the first thing they do, instead of looking at, am I getting past my break even? Do I have positive cash flow? What's the solubility of my organization right now? That's going to determine the urgency in the field, okay? Second point I want to make, you start at the top and with the business. The business is a customer that needs to be taken care of. That's going to determine what else needs to happen. Second super important thing is, instead of you extracting information out of your database or your computer to figure out what everybody else is doing, that front line needs to be sending you a report card of their performance. And they clearly need to understand the significance of that. That's what saved Harley-Davidson International Harvester. And it can do the same thing for you too. Text me. If you guys want to get a group together at some point to go through a half-hour more in-depth conversation about this, it'd be my pleasure to do so. But until next time, God bless and take care. And we'll see you on the other side of break even.